Thanks, John. Hello, people. I'm not officially a pastor, but I do pastoring. But I am officially a member of the teaching team here. So for those who may not know, I have been, a speaker here several times a year for years now. Yeah, about 6. And I think the last one I gave was on video. That was some months ago. 6 or 7 years ago, Ruby and I, we relocated from South Auckland, where I was a pastor, and we relocated to Whanganui. So that's where we are now. So I drove up yesterday. Man, that's a drive. That's 6 or 7 hours of driving, yeah. So how about you all stand up and have a stretch if you want to, and turn around. However you do your stretches, do them. That's it. Okay. And also a big welcome from me to the online community. Really appreciate your presence and your faithfulness. And may this time be good for us all. Yes? Yeah. So good coming back, because I've been bumping into friends. I bumped into friends from way back in this morning service, and bumped into some people this morning that I had got to know in another part of the country. So yeah, I love it. I just love being in this family. We are all brothers and sisters in Christ, aren't we? Yeah? And we've got grandmothers, we've got 100 grandmothers, 100 aunties, 100 uncles. We've just, Christian family is just so good. Yeah. Anyway, I wasn't planning on saying that. But look, I'd like to read out this passage that many of you would have possibly read, heard of before. It's found in 1 Samuel chapter 3, and it goes like this. The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. And then one night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. And the lamp of God had not yet gone out. And Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." But Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." So he went and lay down. Again the Lord called Samuel. And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." "My son," Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. A third time the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other times, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." And the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I'm about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears about it tingle." So that concerned a little boy. I want to tell you about another little boy. And I'm going to give him the name Simon. That is not his real name. But I'm talking about a real person here and their story. So when Simon was a little boy, he was attending a Christian school. And he was in class, and then his teacher read out that passage. And he was struck by that passage. And as soon as she had finished, the school bell went off, and all the kids raced out the door, but he stayed, almost stapled to his chair. And when everybody had gone, the teacher said, "Simon, it's the break. You're usually the first one out. Why are you still here? And with that, he got out of his chair and he walked up to the teacher's desk, stood in front and just said to the teacher, "Does this God still speak to little boys today?" And she said, "Yes, he does." And he was just so struck by that stayed with him for years, that God would whisper to little boys like him. So the years went by, and when he got to the age of 16, his father, somewhat eccentric, his father said, "Well, Simon, it's now time for you to travel around the world by yourself." Yeah, wish my dad had done that, but now it's time for you to go and see more of the world. Age 16. So he went to many countries, and one particular country was Nairobi. And he thought he'd go for a walk one day. So he walked down the main street, but he saw the side street. So he thought he'd dive into a side street. And no sooner had he done that, he was surrounded by horrendous poverty. And he just, froze, got scared. And then he heard someone say, "Money, money, money." And he turned around and he saw this skin bag of a person that had been wrecked and havocked by leprosy. I mean, I've seen in the flesh, up front, in person, lepers. It is horrendous. Money, money. Now, the boy that was asking for money was about the same age as Simon. And so Simon put his hands in his pockets and there was no money, there was no hard money. And so with that, he just felt really stupid and embarrassed, and he raced out to the main street and raced back to his hotel and raced to his room. And no sooner had he got to his room, he leapt himself onto the bed and wept, feeling absolutely whatever it was. And he started to pray to a God that he just didn't really know at that stage of his life. And then he heard a whisper. And the whisper said, he felt God was whispering. And the whisper was, "If you let me guide you for the rest of your life, I will raise you up and enable you to be a part solution to what you have just seen." He thought that was pretty good. Yes, please. The following year, age 17, he surrendered his life to Christ at a camp. And then the years went by, and he eventually ended up in Bible college. And at Bible college, a dream started to form in his heart of hearts. And the dream was, I would love to start a new church. A church that, non-Christians could come to, and they wouldn't feel awkward, they wouldn't feel embarrassed, they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I'd love to do that. And that's what he proceeded to do. So at age 23, Simon, they hired out a movie theatre. And within a year, 1,000 people came. And then as the years rolled by and the decades rolled by, that particular church grew to 20,000, believe it or not. 20,000. Meeting on various services. 20,000. And during those decades, he promoted women into senior leadership positions. And he created a Martin Luther King Day to remind us all about racial reconciliation. On issues of gender, on issues of race, he was so progressive. This person called Simon, who I'm calling Simon, he became very, very famous. I mean, he was a part of Christian royalty. And he was a king amongst pastors. And then in 2013, a serious allegation of sexual misconduct was made against Simon. And over the next 5 years, all manner of serious allegations of misconduct were made against Simon. And he didn't acknowledge any of them, and still hasn't, at least publicly. Eventually, he had to resign. And I'll be honest, people, I'm still reeling over this. I'm still deeply saddened by this. I pray for Simon most weeks of the year. So what went wrong? Before I get into that, I want to say something to you. I'm Mick, and I'm a sinner. I'm Mick, and I'm a sinner. If you don't mind, I'd like us to have an AA session right now. And turn to the person next to you if you don't mind. You don't have to. And just say, I'm Susan, or whatever your name is, and I'm a sinner. Can you do that? Go to it. Okay. Here we go. So, Simon has written many books, and I've read most of them, if not all of them, and have deeply appreciated his books, and I still read them. A shadow hangs over Martin Luther King. I still read him. A shadow hangs over Simon. I can still learn from Simon. Are you with me on this one? So what went wrong? Maybe a number of things. Time allows me to explore one. You see, Simon knew the areas of temptation in his life. And I hope you know yours. I definitely know mine. And you see, Simon, knowing the areas of temptation in his life, what he did was he built fences around the areas of temptation. If you like, moral fences, barricades, boundaries, whatever term you want to use, hopefully to stop him from slipping into inappropriate behavior. And hopefully we all do this, yes? People? Have you got areas of temptation? Hands up. Thank you. And do you put boundaries and fences around? It could be the temptation to lie. It could be the temptation to gossip. It could be the temptation to greed. It could be the temptation to indulge. It could be something on our screens. I mean, when it comes to screen life, I've got boundaries there that I won't take my devices into private places. I give my wife Ruby passwords. I mean, these are just natural, normal boundaries and fences. But they failed. The fences for Simon's life, they failed him. You see, what we have to realize is that fences don't change us. They only manage us. You see, at the heart of Simon's story is a story about sin. And fences don't touch that stuff. Sin is too powerful. You see, there is a problem in our human nature that all the self-help in the world cannot touch. Is that right? And maybe at this point, some of you are thinking, oh no, Mick's about to talk about sin. Yes, I am. And maybe there's some of you here who may be thinking, what is it about you Christians? You're always banging on about sin. It's so judgmental. It's so judgy. You know, it's so negative. But the irony is, people, for the last 2 decades, there has been a strange silence on sin amongst Christians and in our churches, actually. And we don't want to talk about this sin stuff because we don't want to come across as judgy and negative. You know, there was a newspaper in Simon's World, and they were chronicling the scandals, not just of pastors, but also of presidents and so on. Reputable newspaper. And there was on one particular day, an editorial piece where and not Christian, where the editor said, it's time we brought sin out from the mothballs and begin to use it and to mean it. And so that's what I'm doing this morning, is reminding us about something that is really basic, but the issue of sin. Now, I don't know when you first heard the word sin. I don't know when you first heard this. This strange, mysterious little 3-letter word. I don't know when you first heard it, but I was not raised a Christian. I am still the only Christian in my original family. And so I didn't hear this language. And then I got to my young adult years, and you know, up until then, I had stuff in my life, but I blamed the system, I blamed the government, I blamed my family, my mother, my father. You know, I had blamed so many other things. And then I reached a time, early adulthood, as a young adult, and I just knew that there was something wrong with me at my core. I just knew that, you know, I had disordered desires. I just knew that something swam inside of me like a virus. It lurked within. I just knew there was something like an assassin that lived near me, inside of me, that wanted to take me out. I knew somehow I was out of whack. A skin bag full of gross dysfunction. I just had this awareness. But I didn't have a name for it. And that's awful. I didn't know, what is this? I mean, what label do you put on it? What name do you give to it? I mean, it's like, you know, if you get sick. I've been sick this last year. I had 2 operations, and for a while there, with the thing that I had, they couldn't put a name on it. And for a sick person, that's a real struggle. Yes? But then they finally found out what it was, which is good. So similarly with this stuff, I don't know, out of whack. And then I met Jesus, to cut a long story short. I met him. And I started to read the ancient text, the Bible. And Jesus talked about this thing called sin. You know, I got to Mark chapter 2, and there was a paralyzed guy wanting healing, but the first thing that Jesus did was, your sins are I read this as a non-Christian. Your sins are forgiven. And verse 16 of the same chapter, you know, Jesus said, and I welcome sinners. I thought, that's interesting. Here's a category that possibly explains what I've got. And then, you know, John chapter 5, with a woman caught in adultery. And when Jesus was standing alone with her, he didn't say, now don't commit adultery again. He said, sin no more. And I read this and I thought, this is a explanatory framework for what I struggle with as a person. Here it is. It's called sin. This was not bad news for me. This was good news. I finally had a name for what I was struggling with. And I thought, oh, this is so good. This is such good news. But it didn't stop there. Jesus then said, I am the cure. I am the cure. Not this is the cure, but I am the cure. And when I saw that in Jesus, I wanted him. I wanted him. So there was a particular Easter where I got down on my knees in a cold little room in Christchurch. And I said to this Jesus, I want you. Come into my life. And I have now been walking with this Jesus. I turn 67 tomorrow. And I've been walking with this Jesus in my 20s and in my 30s and my 40s and my 50s and now into the tail end of my 60s. And I have experienced Jesus as cure. It's just wonderful. I have been tempted by many things in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s, 50s and 60s. I have sinned. So how have I experienced Jesus as cure? And this is what I want to end with. Firstly, Jesus is on your side in every moment of temptation. Did you hear that? Jesus is on your side in every moment of temptation. I mean, Jesus himself was tempted in all things. We're told that in Hebrews. Secondly, at the intersection between temptation and sin, Jesus sends orange lights. You know, out there, orange lights at an intersection. And what do we do when we see an orange light? What should we do what are we meant to do when we see an orange light? When you see an orange light, you slow down. You be prepared to stop. And so likewise, when it comes to that intersection between temptation and you're about to give into sin, Jesus sends you an orange light. You need to slow down. You need to get your hand on the handbrake, as it were. You need to be prepared to stop. How does he send these green lights? Sometimes it's during a dream in the nighttime while you're sleeping. I've had that. Sometimes he sends, it's like you see a vision during the daytime. I've received that. I was about to launch into sin. Sometimes he sends, it's like you're reading the Bible and a part of the scriptures just begin to light up. That's like an orange light. Sometimes he sends a person. Sometimes he sends someone who's significant in your life. Sometimes he sends you, well, I've received it from my Ruby, my wife. He sends orange lights. Isn't that so good? You're about to make a big mistake. Don't let the sin stop the best from happening in your life. So he sends an orange light. But then thirdly, what happens if we ignore the orange light and we race over to the other side and we launch into inappropriate behavior? I mean, what does Jesus do then? You know, some people believe that when sin enters the room, Jesus bolts for the door. Some people believe that when we mess up with our lives, that Jesus runs away. In fact, it's the very opposite. I mean, just imagine that, you know, you ignored the orange light and you race to the other side and you indulge in whatever, and then things go amok, and it's like you're in a hole in the ground. It's like you're in a pit. Well, where is Jesus? Where is he? Does he run away from the pit? No. Does he come to the very, where the pit is, where you are at the bottom, and does he pull out a finger and just, naughty, naughty, naughty? You know, does he do something like that? No. Does he assume the posture of a kind of a, I don't know, an advisor? No, not initially. What does this Jesus do? He gets down on his knees and he climbs into the hole and he climbs down the hole and then he gets to the bottom of the hole and then he sits down next to you. And then with a whisper, he says, are you ready? And you say, ready for what? And he says, me. So good. This is all good news. And then you say, well, Jesus, what's next? What are next steps? And what Jesus wants to do is he wants to encourage acknowledgement, truth, confession, that there might be forgiveness. This is all good news. And then lastly, and I'll finish with this, Jesus also makes a promise. He gives a guarantee. Life change. Your heart can change. Your life can change. You can become the kind of person deep down you want to become. It can happen. Life change. You know, in 2 Corinthians, it talks about new creation. In Isaiah chapter 64, it says that God is like a potter. My wife is a potter. She's a professional potter. And I watch her at times, and she's got these beautiful hands. And these hands go to work on the clay. And God says in Isaiah 64, he says, I am the potter and you are the clay. It's absolutely amazing what the hands can do with a human heart. Life change. Absolutely real. We're going to take communion now. If you are a person here this morning and you're struggling with temptation, you come to the table. You come to Jesus, actually. And if you are a person here and, you know, you're at that intersection, you know you are close to giving in to something inappropriate. You come to the table, you come to Jesus as you take the bread and the wine. If you have given in and you are sinning, you are doing that which God never envisaged for you to do, you come to the table. You come to Jesus. If you are needing to acknowledge something and confess something this morning, and maybe you've done it 300 times before, and this is the 301st, you come to the table, you come to Jesus. And if you know that, I don't know, at this stage of your life, you want your heart to be more ordered, experience life change, you come to the table, you come to Jesus. Yes? Who would not want to do that? So start making your way to the tables now. But you're not going to a table, you're going to Jesus Christ. Bless you.